Hey, it's Josh, and this is episode 25 of the Josh Bloom podcast, another edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. Quite a lot of star power on this week's show. Francis Ford Coppola, Senator Cory Booker, Iron Maiden, Beavis and Butthead, Madonna, Senator Raphael Warnock, Mötley Crüe, Phish, and Bono are all mentioned. If you want to watch a compilation of all of the original TikTok posts that make up this week's episode, as usual, I have compiled them on YouTube. A link is in the show notes. Please leave a 5-star rating for the Josh Bloom podcast in your podcast app of choice. And while you're doing that, leave a comment too. And if you haven't followed the show, I am surprised that you do that. Engagement helps more people find me, and it's also just a nice thing to do. Thank you so much. Lastly, go to superjews.com for links to all my social media. I post original content for you to enjoy or hate, and you can leave a joyful or hateful comment. That's up to you if you want me to know that you're a joyful or hateful person. You will also find links there to my writing on Substack, which you can subscribe to and receive in your email box. Thanks for listening. Let's get into 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I'll be back to say goodbye afterwards. Day 65 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. My name's Josh. I'm just trying to help myself. Yesterday, we learned about text conversations in which the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America distributed and discussed highly classified top-secret war plans with the Vice President of the United States and as many as a dozen senior cabinet officials. Unbeknownst to them, the editor of the political magazine The Atlantic was also on the chat because the current Secretary of Defense, who is in charge of protecting every U.S. citizen, was using the consumer-level app Signal, which is one step above Snapchat, to conduct this conversation and accidentally added the wrong person. Oopsie. Because of this mistake, we now know that this group of unserious people enthusiastically exchanged emojis related to military actions where many people would die. This stunning ineptitude and lack of intelligence was so unbelievable to the reporter that he thought it was a prank at first. This behavior by elected officials and others that we pay with our tax dollars is unethical, immoral, and illegal. I don't expect any of this to matter to any supporter of the Trump administration because at this point, some say that this is what they want. They want law breaking. They want disregard for the Constitution. They want a divided and broken society that rejects common sense and common decency. Many already say that the story is fake. By the time the lives of the supporters of the Trump administration are touched by the negative consequences of their leader's power over our government and lives, and that he only needed them for their vote, it will be too late. Is this potential outcome unfortunate? Yes. Is it certain? No. What is certain is that you and I can spend this day ignoring the Trump administration. We can spend this day laughing with friends and family and neighbors. We can spend this day using our regained mind and reclaimed time for contributing to the world and our lives in positive ways. It's okay to spend a few minutes thinking about and discussing what is happening around us because it provides an opportunity to come to terms with a basic reality of living, which is uncertainty. Let's continue to get stronger as we continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 66 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Day 66. That reminds me of 666, which is the number of the beast, a very fine song by the group Iron Maiden, representing the devil, but not representing my personal beliefs. I don't believe in the devil, but I do believe what the devil represents in the world is a very real thing. There are forces around us all the time that want to wipe the smiles from our faces, that want to wipe the optimism from our minds, that want to wipe the love from our hearts. And you know what? I'm not into that. As you might have noticed over the last few days, the negative information coming out of the Trump administration is flowing mightily as we find out about the most senior officials in our government exchanging plans for war over unsecured text messages littered with emojis, like a bunch of kids playing Fortnite instead of serious people whose decisions caused the deaths of dozens. Even if you are trying to ignore the Trump administration, this information is no doubt leaking through, and that is the devil's business of which I speak. If this nefarious behavior I describe is the little bit that leaks through, just imagine what is going on that we don't know about, that we won't know about, that we shouldn't know about. Why? Because it is happening and going to continue to happen anyway. If this makes you feel hopeless, I continue to offer the following solution on day 66 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. Acknowledge that we are being governed by people who do not care about us and move on. As the saying goes, the devil is in the details. We don't need to dwell with him there. Instead, practice mindfulness. Be aware of the information you are consuming and regulate. If you need a reminder, listen to Regulate by Warren G, which, like Number of the Beast, is a great song. Now that you have regained all of that time by reclaiming your mind, use it to fight the negative forces by turning that energy out into the world and encourage your neighbors, friends, and loved ones to do the same thing. Shout, shout, shout at the devil, as Mötley Crüe once sang, and continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 67 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. My name's Josh, and I'm just trying to help myself. I find it very funny when I hear reports that say the leader of the Trump administration is negotiating a ceasefire in Ukraine with the leader of Russia. He previously claimed that this war would be over on day one. Day 67. What's the difference, right? The truth is, there is no negotiating to be done between people who have a history of not keeping their word, and these are not men of their word. Your word is the only thing that you have in life to build your character and establish trust with others. These men cannot be trusted. In fact, not keeping their word is the point. Not keeping their word is how it works for them. When you are a person committed to a shameless character without a personal ideology or an ethical or moral fidelity to the truth, you can say whatever you want whenever you want in order to serve your means. So, in the case of a negotiated ceasefire in Ukraine, the only reason they would even be negotiating in the first place is to appear to be negotiating in order to manipulate the people whose lives hang in the balance. There is no interest in actually following through on anything that results from these pretend negotiations, because whatever that result may be, it will change the moment it no longer serves their personal need for power. Again, trust is the only thing you can really negotiate with in life. And once you break that trust, once you break your word, you are not worth anything unless you can somehow convince people that you recognize your mistake and will do better in the future. These guys only make mistakes and they only do worse. They do not deserve our time or attention. Continue to ignore the Trump administration. Oh, thank you for jogging my memory. You are correct. He did say that he would end the war within 24 hours of being elected. I wonder what is going on. this is the guy who wrote Art of the Deal, after all, or at least he wants us to believe he wrote it. I don't think he is much of a writer. I don't think he is much of a reader. Thank you so much for pointing this out. I stand corrected. Day 68 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. John Lovett, a former Obama speechwriter of the Pod Save America podcast, was a guest on the Bulwark podcast yesterday. These are two political shows that I still listen to for a few minutes or so each day, in part because I enjoy these people's voices. They make me feel like I'm hearing from a friend. But once I start hearing news that makes me obsess on the state of the world, I am reminded that these programs generate a substantial profit because of people obsessing, and I tune out. While I was still tuned in, however, John recounted a story from a few years ago when a woman asked him, "Are we really going to have to hang the leader of the Trump administration's portrait with all of the other portraits of the presidents?" John took the question to mean, can't we just get past this and pretend it never happened? He replied, no, this is happening and it reveals something important about the country. I agree with this, and John's sentiment is in line with what I have been saying on 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. We are living in history, just like so many before us have lived through history. Living through history is what gets us to the next place, the better place. Even though we go through moments of fear, uncertainty, and shock, these moments give way to my belief that what is happening right now is the end of something and the beginning of something else. I believe that the promise of the civil rights movement will be fulfilled. I was still naive enough in 2008 to think racism was over when Barack Obama was elected. I realize I was wrong, but his election was progress that could not have even been imagined in 1965. Kamala Harris receiving 74 million votes in 2024 is not something that could even legally happen in 1965. I believe that we can emerge from this moment in history with a deeper knowledge of what we want, and without going through this, we won't have that knowledge. Even if we're fearful, uncertain, and shocked, we're going to go through it anyway. I don't want to see a portrait of the leader of the Trump administration, but a portrait of the leader of the Trump administration does serve to remind me to continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 69 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I fucking told you that a whole bunch of times already. I'm Josh Bloom. I'm just trying to help myself. 69. That's right. I said it in the face of potential censorship because it is absurd. I am a 53-year-old man sitting here laughing like Beavis, Butthead, or both because I don't care, because I know that laughing at dumb jokes is what life is about, and that is why I am going to continue to do it until such a time when I am not allowed to, because I am being tortured in some prison in Louisiana because of something I said on here or wrote somewhere else. But until that time, we must enjoy our lives. We must laugh in the face of what is laughing at us. And it is laughing, believe me. They think that they are getting to us, and we are not going to let that happen because we didn't bargain for that. Did any of us ask to be put here? Did you ask to be put here? I bet you did not. I know you did not. And so that is the reason that you should be taking the time that you have on this planet to enjoy yourself, to enjoy your loved ones, to enjoy your friends, and in this time of hardship, to lift them up, because there are people around you, I guarantee it 100%, who simply cannot lift themselves up in times like this. And it is up to you, to me, to us, to get to them and to say, hey, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be ridiculous. You know how I know? Because when I was on TikTok this morning, there was a 53-year-old dude called Josh Bloom who has this thing called 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. Try to say it fast like that. Say it real fast, because it is fun to say. You can tell them that you saw this dude on TikTok and he made a dumb joke about day 69. He made a stupid joke, and I don't care if you're talking to a teenager. I don't care if you're talking to someone in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. In fact, if you go ahead and say that to someone who might need your help desperately, like someone who is elderly, and you said there was this dumb dude who's 53 years old on TikTok who made a dumb joke about day 69, I guarantee you they're going to be like, that's right. And we're going to have solidarity. We're going to, you know what I'm trying to say. We are going to have solidarity that we didn't even know we had. And that is what this is about on day 69 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. Day 70 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. It is day 70, and we are going to celebrate. Why are we celebrating? Why am I here at the P with Charlie and the kid in the frame? It's because we are 5% through the 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. And if you don't think that is a small feat, well, I am here to tell you it absolutely is. Did you think you would be here? Did you know for certain that you would be here? Look, we never know for certain where we'll be. But one thing I did know for certain is that we were uncertain. I am going to use this time to reiterate what I would like to say is a mission statement here at 1004, but that you know what it's called. That mission statement is: we have to consume less information. And why? Because it is poisoning our minds, it is poisoning our hearts, it is poisoning our souls. These newscasters, podcasters, people who put this information out into the world for us to consume at an alarming rate, they get paid to do that. Now, look, I'm not saying they're bad people. That Katie Tur on MSNBC, for example, she can't get through one sentence without flubbing it. I'm not on TikTok. She's not out there. I'm a TikToker. Okay, I can get through words. I can get through sentences with flubbing them. She's on a network. She gets on there and she's talking about Phish, the band Phish. Okay, there are people in this world who can't even afford a Phish, and she can pay to go see the band Phish, which I am just not even certain is really worth the price of admission. But I'm using her as an example, but it could be anyone. It could be anyone on MSNBC, CNN, any of these places. They are paid to keep us engaged. How do they keep us engaged? They keep us engaged with rage. Say it with me. They keep us engaged with rage, and I don't want to be engaged with rage. I want to be engaged with love and harmony and prosperity and the possibility of a better future. And to get there, we need to consume less information. And when we do, when we take in less, that means we have more time and more space, what they now call these days bandwidth. I don't even know why the hell they call it that. I think it's kind of stupid. What it really means is you have more time and energy to do other things. And when you have that time and energy to do other things, I highly recommend that the other things that you do are involving taking care of yourself and making yourself a better person and reaching out to the people around you that you care about and love and want to see prosper and want to see joyful, and helping them do that and filling their lives with your positive energies. And so today, day 70 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, Trump, whatever the fuck his name is, you know what I mean. Please enjoy and continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 71 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. If you asked me to name something I love about America, I would say donut shops. But after that, it would be the mix of cultures. I live in a middle-class town an hour north of New York City that is very culturally mixed. There are many ethnicities, religions, and political ideologies represented here, and it is a wonderful thing. Just the different grocery stores alone. I love being able to walk into a completely different culture by just going into a different building. I find it sad that members of the Trump administration and its supporters seem disinterested at best and hostile at worst towards the lives of people that are not like them, be it ethnically, religiously, politically, or what really freaks them out, sexually. The leader of the Trump administration and his loyalists are missing out on so much of what is already great about America in their misguided attempt to make it great again. They seem to want us to believe that people have no interest in embracing our differences and how that embrace can change our lives in positive ways. I hope I will never understand what it is like to be so uncurious about what makes our differences different and our similarities similar. I had a fun exchange at the P yesterday that put this in perspective and made me happy. A casual interaction with a group of three sitting at the table next to me led to one of the gentlemen, who I know from previously overheard conversations is a fan of the leader of the Trump administration, asking me if I had fasted for Lent. His tone was light and so was mine. I said, "Yeah, sure." He laughed. The rest of the group laughed too. He said, "You're not a Catholic, are you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Jewish?" I said, "Maybe." He said, "Muslim?" I shrugged, "Maybe." He said, "Assalamu alaikum." And I replied, "Assalamualaikum salam." I didn't do the best job at pronouncing that, but we laughed some more anyway. They left shortly after that, but not before introducing themselves. The woman in the group even told me that her car is named Josh. I love that in America we can have interactions like this with people that our so-called leaders think or feel cannot happen. We prove them wrong when we pay attention to the table next to us and ignore the Trump administration. Day 72 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. My name is Josh, and I am just trying to help myself. As of this moment, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker has been holding the Senate floor for over 16 hours as he filibusters in protest of the Trump administration. Earlier today, he yielded for a question from Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, who is also pastor of Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is considered the spiritual home of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As Senator Warnock spoke, I was reminded again of how much I want to see this country run by Black and Indigenous women. The reason that I want the country run by people who are systematically oppressed is because they have been systematically oppressed. People who have suffered understand suffering. It's as simple as that. The members of the Trump administration only understand how to make people suffer. This doesn't mean that you must be a minority to understand struggle or that other people from other backgrounds don't understand oppression. But while I can never have firsthand knowledge, I have seen it with my own eyes when a Black person living their dreams and contributing to making a better world walks into the wrong place at the wrong time and is seen as nothing but the color of their skin. This must end. Senator Booker reminds us that in 1957, Senator Strom Thurmond filibustered for over 24 hours in protest of the Civil Rights Act in 1957. Thurmond never had a change of heart. It was the people that applied the pressure. Senator Booker reminds us that no man in the Senate had a change of heart when women got the right to vote. It was the people applying the pressure. Now, please don't get it twisted. I don't think anyone's perfect. Senator Warnock is talking about going back to Georgia every Sunday to the pulpit. He says that he goes back to the pulpit every Sunday because he doesn't want to talk to politicians all the time, or else he'll become one. I'm like, come on, bro. You are a politician. Don't let your righteousness undermine your righteous message. There is a difference between the right and the left is less bad. I want to be on the side of less bad. And I do believe that when minorities are in charge, they operate from a less bad perspective by default, because they know what it's like to be treated more bad. Be less bad and keep on ignoring the Trump administration. Day 73 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, just trying to help myself. Do you have an opinion about Cory Booker's 25-hour speech? Please comment below. I see some liberals are being called cynical for criticizing Cory Booker's 25-hour speech on the floor of the Senate. Some complain that he wasn't protesting any specific bill, that he was just trying to break that old racist Strom Thurmond's record, that it was a pointless, self-aggranding exercise, etc. At the end of the day, as I said on day 72, politicians, including Cory Booker, are still politicians. They have obligations to people and organizations, and often questionable people and organizations, that they would not be obligated to otherwise. They are earning money that most people will never see. I disagree with the negativity from the left because it is what Cory Booker talked about during that speech that matters. It is the fact that the very act drew so much attention to what he said to the people who were listening. At one point, I saw over 100,000 people watching live on YouTube. That's a lot. It doesn't necessarily matter to me that it was Cory Booker delivering the message. It matters that the message was delivered at all. I mentioned Martin Luther King Jr. yesterday. To make an analogy, there are some people who dislike the band U2, simply because they find Bono to be a pretentious twat. But they very well may have learned who Martin Luther King Jr. is because of the band's worldwide hit Pride in the Name of Love that is about him. Critics call out Booker or Bono even though he is philanthropic, contributes to making the world a better place, and sings about King because he is still a privileged and rich rock star. The point is, I can understand why some say what Cory Booker did is performative. I don't attribute the act to Cory Booker. I don't know much about him in the first place. I don't want to know too much about any politician, frankly. I want to know what they're going to say, and I want to know what they're going to do, and I want those two things to be the same thing. Conveying ideas is what matters. When we call something performative, we need to remember that all of life is a performance. We present ourselves to the world the way we choose, and what we say, what we do, how we look, and who we associate with, and so on. If it's performative and it helps the world become a better place, that's a pretty good show. Unlike the show taking place in the White House. Cancel that show. Continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 74 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I'm not a self-help guru, silly. I'm just trying to help myself. What do you think of tariffs? Please let me know in the comments. Okay, tariffs. I am paying too much attention to tariffs, and that means I am paying too much attention to the Trump administration. It's as if they are screaming at us, look here, look here. We just want to let you know that we are going to destroy your future, and while we're destroying your future, we are going to make sure that your present is miserable. I don't think the vast majority have ever thought about the word tariffs and probably never will. I envy their ability to ignore the Trump administration by default. We're going to see what happens whether we want to or not, but unfortunately, many or most people will feel the effects before they realize they're being felt. I am sure the members of the Trump administration and their leader believe that they have some kind of plan. I am also sure that whatever that plan is, it doesn't involve giving a shit about how the American people feel about it, especially since the leader of the Trump administration is an angry, vengeful, and deceitful person. I don't know about you, but angry, vengeful, and deceitful are not the qualities I look for in a leader. For those who think he is a business genius, I wish them well because I am not angry, vengeful, or deceitful. I don't want to see anyone suffer under the rule of this human being. The brain is a malleable organ and can be easily damaged by men who choose to put their effort into hurting others while trying to heal their own psychic wounds. People drawn into believing the malicious lies of the leader of the Trump administration will have plenty to deal with without me wasting my positive energy on sending negative thoughts their way. Let's use this moment to take a break from worry. We've earned it. To paraphrase Madonna, we need a holiday. We need time to celebrate. Just one day out of life, it would be so nice. Take this opportunity to ignore the Trump administration. I mean, look at what we see when we pay attention to it. Instead, use this time to love your fellow man, woman, child, and most importantly, yourself. Love is free. Maybe I'll go see the 4K restoration of Apocalypse Now this weekend. I will balance the idea of the title Apocalypse Now with the idea that I'm watching a culturally significant piece of art. For now, be frugal, hold on to whatever savings you may have, and continue to ignore the Trump administration.
Hey, it's Josh. That's it for today's episode of the Josh Bloom Podcast and the latest edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I hope you enjoyed my presentation of this often awful subject matter. If you did, don't forget to follow the podcast, leave a review and a rating, and tell a friend about the show. It really helps. Don't forget to visit me everywhere for everything at superjews.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback, and suggestions. Thank you for tuning in.